Welcome to our fifth and final webinar of the September webinar series on Bluebeam Revu. Today will be all about the exclusive features of Bluebeam Extreme. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders to everyone. You are muted. There is a Q&A feature if you have a question. I will try to respond to those. I'll try to leave time at the end of the webinar, but if I don't get to them, what I've been doing is adding question responses at the end of the recordings and then posting all of that combined data up to YouTube. This session is being recorded. It will also be added up to YouTube in a few days. And one last reminder, we do have an anonymous survey as you leave the webinar today. Please take a few minutes to answer those 5 or 6 questions. You really don't need to leave your contact information unless you want us to contact you to talk about your training needs, but we do very much appreciate your feedback. Since this is the last webinar, I'll talk in greater detail about our training program than I have in the past, but it'll still be brief. I just want to talk about the pricing for our training. Our training is sold in different blocks. There are classes that are scheduled for 8-hour blocks of time. Now, when we do those on site, we come to you and we do it within a day. But when we do it virtually, what we do is we do 4 2-hour blocks of time so that you get a full 8-hour training class, 2 hours in the morning, long lunch break, 2 hours in the afternoon, and then we repeat the process on the second day so that you don't just get completely burned out on Zoom. The pricing of our 8-hour training classes is as low as $100 a student for 8 hours of either pre-structured or completely customized training. So again, if you'd like to talk to us about options, content, pricing options, all those types of things, just give me a call or contact me or ask that we contact you in that survey, include your contact information, and I will respond back to you. We do have a YouTube channel. All these recordings are up there, and this one will be up there probably by Friday. In the chat portion of the Zoom interface, there's already a hot link to it. So if you haven't been there before, click on that and you can see what's there, and you can also subscribe so that you'll be notified as I post new Bluebeam content to that YouTube channel. If you do want to contact me, that's my phone number, email address, and our website where all of our training and consulting services are documented. There's plenty of material up there, but if you need anything or have questions, just give me a call. I am using Revu 20 today. It will be very similar to Revu 2019 and 2018. If you're using Revu 2017 or anything older, it will look very different, but a lot of what I show you is there. It just functions, it works differently. It's in different places in the menu. So if you're not aware of it, there actually, for the Microsoft Windows platform, there are 3 different, what Bluebeam calls editions. There's Standard, CAD, and Extreme. Today, we're just talking about Extreme, which has features that the other 2 editions don't. Now, if you've never been to this website, I highly suggest you check it out. It's bluebeam.com/solutions/compare. And that's where I'm going to go to take a look at the differences between the 3 editions. This is their website, and as I scroll down with my mouse, there's simply a list of features and little check boxes to indicate which one does what. And if we look at the key features section, right there at the top, we can see there's about 8 things that are exclusively available in the Extreme edition. One of those is optical character recognition, or OCR. It will take a scanned or poorly created PDF that is not text searchable, and it will convert it so that the text is searchable so that you can perform the tasks that you want to perform with actual text. Not just automatic form creation, but creation and editing of PDF forms, period, is only available in the Extreme edition. Now, with the other 2, you can fill in the content, the editable, fillable form, fields of a PDF form, but you can't edit the content or create anything from scratch unless you have the Extreme edition. You can take measurement markups and you can not only extract that information into a summary report, which you can do with the other editions, but you can have a live link between an Excel spreadsheet and your quantity and measurement calculations so that as the PDF changes, the spreadsheet updates automatically. That's called Quantity Link, and it's only available with Extreme. There is a really powerful scripting capability, actually two, with Bluebeam Extreme Edition. And then there's several batch applications. The three in particular I'm going to focus on are the three that are in this list here: batch link, batch sign and seal, and batch slip sheeting. So I'm going to jump in and get started with batch link. I've got Bluebeam Revu 20 running here, and I'm going to go and open a file, and I will go to my desktop, week 5, batch link, and open up this document. Now this is a PDF. I just went to the web and searched for PDF bid sets and found hundreds of them from different municipalities, and this is one that I grabbed and downloaded. And when I go in here and look at it, when I look at the cover page or page 2 here and I look at all of the sheets and the sheet index, it'd be really nice if I, instead of having, this is a 96-page PDF, instead of having to go look for what I want, if the document itself already had hyperlinks built into it to where I could just click on A3.1 or A1.1 and have it take me there instead of me scrolling and searching and digging around and trying to find what I'm after. That can be done easily with the batch link function. So I'm going to go kick it off. It's right under here. There's a whole batch menu if you have the Extreme Edition. And underneath here, right about just almost halfway down, is batch link. I'm going to hit new, and I'm going to take the only open document I have and tell the system that that's the one that I want to process. And now I've got multiple choices about how it goes about finding the pieces of text that I want to be able to utilize in the future. Now, if your document has good page labels, you can just say, page labels, these are great, generate, and then run it, and you're pretty much done. And I'm going to do that, but I wanted you to see one of the other options here is page region. If I don't have good page labels or file names that really, associate with the sheet numbers, you can use page region and hit select, and it asks you to go down and supply a rectangle where it's going to be able to find the sheet number. And when I do that, it gives it, well, this is region 1, we found T2, is that what you want? I'll say yep, and I could continue to add additional regions so that it could string together a searchable text field that it's going to use for the hyperlinks. But that achieves what I want, so I'm going to hit OK, and now it's ready. See, I can't hit the run button here until you hit the generate button, so that it can go through and it can look at what it sees and report back to you what it found. Now that takes, on a file this size, 96 pages, that takes about 40 seconds. I'm not going to wait for that. I know it's much faster, and I know I've got really good page labels. So instead of having it do one method, I'm just going to use the other, but the result will be 99% of the time the same. And I'm just going to hit generate. So based on the page labels, these are all the sheets of paper in this 96-page bid set, and these are the search terms that it found. Now, I've done this where I did the page region, and it found all of them except like C2. It had a C space dash space 2 instead of C dash 2. So it got close, but not 100%. So if you use the page region version where it's trying to figure these things out for you, be sure to double check what you're seeing there, because these are editable. If it came up with a result that is close but not what you like, you can just change that before you hit run. So I've got what I want. I'm just going to hit run, and what it's going to do is it's going to go through the entire document, 96 pages, and it's going to look for every occurrence it can find of the sheet numbers, and it's going to build a hyperlink automatically so that I don't have to go into each individual page and draw a little rectangle saying, oh, link this to that, link this to that, link this to that. Let the system work harder for you. It came back, remember, it's only a 96-page PDF, but it came back with 441 hyperlinks that got created. I forgot to show you some of the choices I made, so I'm not going to actually run it again, but I'll bring up the menu and show you what I wanted to show you, which is right here. Underneath link options, there's several options that you can do. You don't have to include any kind of appearance. It'll still build a hyperlink, but it'll be hidden. And it'll stay hidden unless you go to the link panel over here, and then you're able to go look and see the panel. But I told it to include a green highlight, and I made some choices there that have impacted the behavior of what happened in the file itself. So that's why I got these green highlight markups inside of here indicating these hyperlinks. These are actual hyperlinks that it found that go to other documents, so or other pages within this document. So now if I want to go to A1.1 or A3.1, I can just click on it and it automatically takes me to that page. Now the default presumption when you're doing the batch link is that whatever page you go to, I'm just using back to the previous view, whatever page you go to, if I just leave my mouse hovering over that, it shows you that part of the definition is to go to that page and do a fit page operation. It's just part of what it does by default. If that's not what you want, you can go to the link panel. You can choose any one of those links that you're seeing there, and you can go in and you can edit it. You can edit the action so that instead of jumping to a specific page and doing fit page, you can have it go to a specific portion of the page, or perform different options than what the default was. About the highlights and things that are going on here, those are going to show up if I print this document, and they're going to show up all the time unless I take some action, since I included that, to give the user the ability to hide that stuff. So one of the things you might want to consider doing if you highlight your found links is to go into the hyperlink panel and grab everything with a Control-A, and then go into the document itself and right-click. I'm going to zoom in a little closer here so that you can see it. Let's do a Control-A, and I'll come right here and I'll right-click and go to layer. And I'm going to create a layer called links where I want to put my hyperlink graphics. So now if I go to layers and I just turn it off, I just turn off the highlight so that it's not printing on my output, and it's not showing up on the screen if I don't want it. Now another thing you could do, it's just a standard part of layers. You could choose that layer, and under layer properties, you could tell it that you don't want it to print. And then it doesn't matter if it's visible or not. When you push it out to paper, if you do that, it's going to ignore those green rectangles, but you'll still be able to tell where you have highlights. Now, it came up with 441 hyperlinks. Well, why did it do that? Well, if I go to A1.1, this is why it came up with that, is because inside of these plans and elevations and section drawings, it's not just going through the title block information for that cover sheet or that drawing index. It's going everywhere it can find it. It's putting in those hyperlinks. So now I've jumped to A3.1, and if I click here, I'm jumping to A3.2. So that's how it came up with like 441 of those things as opposed to just a few. And that is an example of batch link. The next extreme capability that we're going to cover is called batch, sign, and seal. I can go in and I can open a file or create a file. Let's just do it from scratch here. I'll do a file from a template, and I'll grab an electrical drawing. I could sign this and I could stamp it. I could go in here and I could say, let's do a stamp. Let's take this seal. Let's stamp it right there. And then let's go do a digital signature. And I want to sign this document, and I want to draw my signature right there, and I want to answer all these questions, and I finished one sheet. All right, now that is time consuming, and it's repetitive, and you can streamline that if you have the Extreme Edition by doing a batch, sign, and seal, meaning that you're going to put a digital signature and some sort of stamp. To get to it, you need to go to batch, and underneath batch, there's a button right there that says sign and seal. And when I choose that, I don't even have to have a file open. It's asking me, okay, what files do you want me to process? So I'm going to tell it to go grab some files. I'm going to my folder where I put some stuff called sign and seal. There are 6, I think they're 22 by 34 standard drawings. And then there's 2 8.5 by 11 RFIs or submittals or just standard small format stuff. And I'm going to grab all of that, and I'm going to say, let's include that in my batch. So I've got a combination of large and small format documents. Now I'm going to hit next, and it's going to bring up the batch, sign, and seal interface. And this is what it looks like. On the left-hand side, it's got 3 sections. What do you want your seal or your stamp to look like, and you can choose from any of your existing stamps that you've got available. If you don't turn it off, it's going to want to put today's date and time in the document, and you can choose whether or not it does that, and if it does it, whether or not it's flattened, and if you flatten it, whether or not you want to allow unflattening of it. And then it's also going to want to place a digital signature. Now I've got two different size sheets of paper here. So this is the most important part of the interface for my dollar, is this page size button down here. When you're doing a batch sign and seal, you always need to go to page size and make sure that if you're working with multiple size documents, that you adjust your stamps and signatures and dates to fit each document size, right? Because if you just leave them set to one method, they're all going to be in the upper left-hand corner like this. So I'm going to grab my seal. I'm just going to slop it right there. Maybe I'll make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to grab my signature and just drag it and drop it right there. Even though it's already got a date in the stamp, this is part of the sign and seal process, and I'm going to tell it to put that over in here somewhere. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to go back to the large format and do the same thing. I'm going to grab my seal and I'm going to put it right about there. Man, I'll shrink it down so it's not so obtrusive. All right, now I'll drag my signature over. That looks good enough. And I'm just going to leave the date stamped in the upper left-hand corner. So I've made all of the choices that I need to make. It already knows which files to process, and I just hit go. And it says, you're about to make changes to multiple files. Are you sure you want to do that? And I'll say yes. So it's got 8 files, 6 big ones. Now, this is actually physically, digitally signing the document, and I use a third-party certificate from an authority. So it's asking me for my password. I'll give it my password, and it will complete the process. When it's done, I'll come back to the menu to show you a couple of options on digital signatures, just so that you know what your options are. So it's finished. I'll go open those files in just a second, and we'll see the result. But if I go back to batch, sign and seal, and I grab another set of files, let's say I'm going to go to scripts, and I'm not actually going to do these files, but I'm going to pretend I am and do that, so that you can see this menu structure here that I wanted to show you. Underneath digital signatures here, you've got the choice of signing the document using whatever appearances you choose to use, but you also have the choice of doing document certification. And if you choose document certification, when you do this batch process, you've got the 3 normal options that are available for doing certified documents when you manually process one file at a time. So I just wanted you to know that those options are available to you. So let's go open those documents and see what happened to them. So if I go back to week 5, sign and seal, I grab all 8 of those files and open them up. This is what happened. In A511, it got the stamp right there. It got the date in the upper left-hand corner, and it got my digital signature right on top. It knows it's valid, and if I go to my signature panel, I can actually see that it's a valid digital signature, certified and verified through IdenTrust is my certificate authority. But you have the same sort of thing with DocuSign or any other third-party CA. And if I go look at the 8.5 by 11 RFIs and I fit those to the screen, it was signed differently with the seal and the signature and the date all pushed down into a different area of the document itself. All right, so let's close those. That is an example of batch, sign, and seal. Next is going to be my favorite, which is batch slip sheeting. And I'm going to do it 2 different ways. First way is I'm going to open a document in this folder here called Combined. Now this is a single PDF file that if I go look at multiple pages at the thumbnails, it's got 19 sheets of paper in it. Right? Now, if I didn't have Extreme, I know I could update this. Like for example, if I wanted to take out this fireplace and I wanted to remove this wall and make one big office out of that, and I did it, and I called it Rev A, I could come back in here with any of the other editions and I could right click on the thumbnail and I could go down and say replace pages, and I could go say, grab Rev A and let's go in there and let's replace this with this on page number 1. And if I had done markups on that A1.1 page, if I turn this on, it will ignore the markups, leave them in place, and just replace the PDF content so that only the PDF content gets updated. Or I could just wipe out all the markups that were there and start clean with a brand new copy of that page. But what I can't do is I can't keep a chronological history. I can't have this is what it used to look like and this is what it looks like now. That's what batch slip sheeting does. I'm going to do it without a document set, and then I'm going to do it with the document set so you can see the different behaviors. So here I'm in a multi-page PDF, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a batch slip sheet, and I'm going to tell it, let's take the current open file, which is called combined, that has 19 pages, and let's go look for revised pages. And in my folder here, there are 3 revised pages. There's Rev A, there's Rev A, and there's Rev A for different architectural and fire safety pages. So now there are multiple ways of which it can compare these revisions to the original document and try to figure everything out. And you can do the same page region where you draw a rectangle manually. You can do file name, but again, I'm very careful with my page labels, so I tend to use that 99% of the time, and I'm just going to tell it to match pages. And what it's done is it's looked at the big document and it's figured out that, okay, that first Rev A is for sheet number 1, that second Rev A is for sheet number 2, and that third Rev A is for sheet number 12 of 19. And there are 16 pages of these 19 pages that don't have any modifications to them. And I'm looking at all of that and say, yep, that is all 100% correct. Down here, I can choose whether I still want to replace, or if I want to use the option I didn't have before, insert the revised pages before the current one. That's what I want, and I'm going to hit go. It's going in there and it's not replacing, but inserting in front of the old page a new page with the new content. Now, when it's done, you can actually generate a detailed summary report in a PDF format that has hyperlinks to the various files and things. I don't really need that, so I'm just going to cancel out of it. So here is A1.1, the most up-to-date replaced version of it, and we can see the fireplace is gone and the office is now one big office instead of 2 smaller ones. But if we go and look at the previous edition of that page, we can see what was changed here, and it's stamped with a great big superseded. One thing it's not going to do using this method is it's not going to take this one and stack them on top of each other and only show me the most up-to-date. That's what you get when you combine batch slip sheeting with document sets. All right, so I'm going to repeat this process with different documents in using a document set instead of a big multi-page PDF. So I'm going to start by saying, let's go to sets and let's just create a brand new set. And I'm going to, it's just simply saying this is a collection of files, not the actual files. It's in essence an XREF pointing to various documents. And I'm going to go grab the documents that I want. There are multiple templates I can choose from. I know that construction has what I want, so I'm going to leave that. In fact, you can change which one is your default in your review preferences options that we've covered many times in these webinars. But I'm just going to leave that and hit OK. And I'm going to go to original documents. These are an electrical and a fire protection document that are the way they were, unedited, first edition, boom. Now here it's asking me to tell it the sheet name and the sheet number. And the option here is to skip it or to use the select region option, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to draw a box around the sheet name. It's already figured out what it sees. I say, yep, that's good. Now it wants the sheet number. I'm going to hit select and go down into the title block where it can anticipate the sheet number being. Let it do that. I look at what it previewed and say, yep, that's good. Now, if I open this thing up, it's giving me a report of what it found. You know, this file name with this label, with this sheet name, this revision number, these dates. It's just reporting to me, hey, this is what I found. That all looks fine to me, so I'm going to hit go. And all I've done at this point is create a document set. I mean, that's standard. You can do that with any edition. But now I'm going to combine a Extreme exclusive function with a document set. So I'm going to rerun the slip sheeting on this set. So instead of saying add open files, I'm going to say add the open set, which will give me the files that are members of it. And then I'll repeat the process of telling it where the revisions are. All right, now I can point to individual files, or I can just point to a folder and just say they're right there in that edited folder. And it found those same 2 files with new revisions. And I'm going to, again, use page label as my matching methodology. And it's figured out that this one and this one match, and this one and this one match. And again, I'm going to insert it. I'm going to copy markups from the current page, if any exist, and I'm going to stamp it superseded. That these choices are why it behaved the way it did before and why it's about to behave the way it's going to when I hit OK. So it's going through and it's doing exactly what it did with a large multi-page PDF. And at first, it doesn't look like it stacked them at all. That's because I'm not finished yet. It knows that this fire protection document is Rev 0 and this fire protection document is Rev 1. And it's already marked it as superseded. When I finally confirm and hit OK, that's when it will stack them on top of each other. And again, I get the option of generating this batch summary report, which I don't need, so I'm just going to cancel out of it. And now with the use of batch slip sheeting with a document set, now I've got 2 versions of the fire protection document, the most up-to-date, and if I click on this little tiny arrow right here, that takes me back to the previous version. And there could be 6 versions of this thing, for example, and you could walk back in time or walk forward in time, and all of the ones that are not the most up-to-date would have this X and this superseded stamp on it so that you can see. And if you click on it, it opens up that version. So if I click here, I'm seeing the edited one versus the up-to-date one. One last advantage of this procedure is if you're using sets with batch slip sheeting, you can go to any of these stacks and you can right-click on it, and there's a button right there to do the standard document compare or document overlay of that particular grouping of stacked revisions. So if I just say compare documents, it's okay, the first one to the second one, hit go, let's go take a look. And it just does a document compare, which we know creates a cloud indicating what is different between the first version of this file and the most recent version of this file. And obviously here, if I go and click on it, it is this modification to that portion of the piping. Okay, we're going to move on to optical character recognition. And I'm going to go get rid of this set. Don't need it. And I'm going to go open another file. So I'm going to go to here, OCR, and I'm going to open up this file here. This is one of those downloaded internet available free sample bid set files. And I like it. It's a nice looking file, but the problem with it is whoever generated it in such a way that it is a raster PDF, not a vector PDF, so I can't snap to the intersection of lines and things like that. And if I try to do a highlight and I put my highlighter over text, that should automatically be switching over to a text selection process where I can just grab a word or a chunk of lines or a whole paragraph of stuff, and it's not doing that. And if I go into the search panel and I search for an obvious word like survey, if I come in here and say go find every instance of the word survey, and I told it, search in the current page, the current document, whatever choices I'm doing there, just go. See, it's finding nothing because this file was created in a way that it created a file that is just not text searchable. And if you don't have the Extreme Edition, there's nothing you can do about that unless you take it into Acrobat or something else that has OCR. Bluebeam Standard and CAD don't have OCR, but Extreme does. So if I want to, I can go into Document, and right in the middle of Document there is optical character recognition, and I can have it process this one file by telling it I want to do orientation, I want to look for vertical text, I want to, there are no vertical vector pages in this one. I can tell it that this is a table or form or text document and get better results. Since I know this is a CAD drawing, I'm going to leave that set there. You can choose different languages that maybe different portions of it are in different languages. There's lots of choices you can do there. You can also go to batch and you can do OCR on not just a single file, but you could point it to a bunch of files, a folder, a tree of PDF documents, and let it go through an OCR an entire collection of documents. Now, I did this earlier, and to OCR this page took about just about a full 60 seconds. And again, I'm not going to waste time watching a clock spin in a webinar. So all I did was go to Document, OCR, make the choices I want, and hit go. I'm just going to show you the end result of that, which again took about a minute. So I'm going to go to Processed, and I'm going to open up the processed version of this. So now if I split them in half, all right, so I've got the original one over here, and I can tell that because if I go to highlight, nothing changes. But if I go to the processed one and I'm using the highlighter, you can see, just watch my mouse, it changes from that to here where it's wanting to find actual text as opposed to always being in that freeform mode. And that's a result of the OCR having done its job. I can also go in here to search on this document, tell it I want to search for the word survey, and when I hit go, it found 24 instances of the word survey. And with the search result, I could choose any one of those, and I could go in and put in like a hyperlink or highlight it, or I could perform count operations. Having a document that is text searchable is a very powerful feature that leads to many, many other capabilities that you can use. And again, OCR is available for the Extreme Edition. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to kill that, and let's go talk about forms. For forms, again, you can fill in PDF forms with any edition, but you can't create or edit forms. So I'm going to start by just creating a blank PDF and use the tools that are under the Forms panel to go in and start filling in form fields. I'm going to tell it I want a text box where the user can type in anything they want. And I could do that again and again and again. Or I can just click on it and do Control-Shift like any other markup. And while I'm in the form editor, I can start copying stuff around like that. Now I can also rename any of this stuff, city, zip, address, phone number. You can put labels that actually make sense. When you've got the beginning of a form, right, then you can come in and place these other objects, other feature capabilities like a radio button. And when you go to draw it, you'll see you're getting these construction lines that help you go ahead and build it in such a way so that you're not having to sit there and struggle with getting things aligned automatically. Here's the use of a checkbox instead of a radio button. So now if I come in and put a checkbox, I could copy that down, but it wouldn't give me the construction lines. So it's actually faster sometimes to just draw it from scratch than it is to do what I was doing. Now I'm going to hit escape. And typically this form would have all kinds of pretty graphics behind it. I'm just putting in the fields where I want to collect metadata. If I go in and put metadata in there, and I put in here, this is TPC, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 5, 6, 7, 8, and this is Pennsylvania, and this is Texas, whatever. And I choose a radio button, and I choose a checkbox. Everything I've done to this form, not only can the form be saved, but the information in the form, what's even more important, the data, the metadata, can be saved and reused to pre-populate other forms later on. That is done through the Tools, Form, and there's a button right here that says Export Data. If you export data, it's going to create a file called an FDF file. And that is for gathering, maintaining, and reusing form field data. So I could do that. I can say, let's go create a file. I'm going to dump it right on my desktop, and I'm going to call this uglyform.fdf. I'll just hit OK. Now, let's say I saved this form and 2 months from now, and I'm just going to go to Tools, Form, and reset it, just wipe everything out there. So I'm reusing this form weeks from now, months from now, and boy, I wish I had all the answers I gave it back when, so that I could start with a copy of that and then edit what changed. That's the function of an FDF file. I could go to Tools, I could go to Form, and I could say Import Data and go choose that file if I kept it. Right? It's uglyform.fdf, hit OK, and it's going to repopulate it with all the choices that I had made previously. So forms aren't just pretty forms. They're a doorway to doing metadata management, and FDF is only one of several different file formats that you can work with. Right? So let me show you some more examples in here. I'm going to show you how you could create a form from an existing PDF, even if you scanned one in. I've even done this where I have hand sketched what I want a form to look like and scanned that and brought it in and used the automatic form creation, and it works really well if you're good, if you're a good draftsperson who can make a good looking form. But most of the time you do it in Word or Excel or something, or CAD, and then you dump it out. So I'm going to say File, New PDF from a template, and I'm going to choose RFI2 template. Now this is not a form. I mean, it's a form, but it doesn't have any form fields in it. It's just a PDF file. And if I wanted to do this without Extreme, I'd have to come over here and hit text or typewriter, and I have to start putting all that stuff in, and I'd have to use a digital signature and pop that into the signature field. I want the easiest, fastest way of getting things done. So I'm going to go, and I've got Extreme. So I'm going to go to Tools, Form, and tell it to automatically create the form fields for me. And it's done. It went through and it looked at everywhere it saw an underline or an obvious location where you were expecting some type of content. Then it looked at what that looked like, and it determined, should I use a signature here? Should I use a checkbox? Should I use a text field? Let's say, for example, under sketch reference, we really didn't want that to be a text box. We could delete that, even though it found it for us. We could then come back and say, you know what, I want a drop-down list there, and I'm going to put in this drop-down list, and we'd make it prettier and all that. But then I could, while it's highlighted right here, I could go into Properties, and I could go into the list of items, and I could build an acceptable list of answers that I'm willing to take from people who are filling in this particular form. There's lots of things that you can do with a form, whether it is automatically generated like what I did or not. Now, I've used this before, and I saved the input that I put in there. So if I come back now and do Tools, Forms, and Import, and I import from my PDF form folder this form right here called Punch or RFI data. Now it's got reusable information from that FDF file that I can now preload this form. All I have to do is save a copy of this RFI as a template, save my FDF file, and then every time I fill out an RFI, I can preload the stuff that is pretty common and then just save time in editing the unique characteristics of each individual page. During the webinar, I showed that when you're working with a PDF form, you can export and import the metadata content of that form using a file format type called FDF. And you do that through Tools, Form, and Export or Import Data. Now, both of those buttons are going to use the FDF file format. However, if you combine both PDF forms and the scripting language, you can create comma-separated value files and extended markup language files that can really be put to use by a talented programmer. To do that, you simply go to Document, Script, and you write a script. And if you start typing in the letter F, it'll jump to those functions. And you'll notice right here there's a form import, which also uses the FDF file format, but form export can use FDF
but it can also use XML and CSV. So that's what I did. I wrote 2 scripts that allow me to export my form data in either CSV or XML, and then I just added those to my script toolbar. So now when I've got a form that's filled up and I want to take that information and make it available for other purposes, you just click on your script, and all that metadata is now in a comma-separated file that I can open into Microsoft Excel, or again, hand to a talented programmer and let them take full advantage of having access to that provided information.
Now, here's one last example of another form. I'm going to kill this one here. And it's just another example of what you can do with these forms. I'm going to say open. I'm going to grab this one called advanced. And I created this manually. I placed under forms here, I placed the different types. For each of these, like building, I made sure that that was a pick list. And when I went down into properties, I gave it the building numbers that are available and in use. And then based on that information, I answered all those questions. But one of the other things you can do with a form is you can put in these programmable buttons. So if I come in here and say, I want to draw a button from here to here, once I have a button, now I can go to properties and I can take a look at it and I can change its label, I can change what it does, I can change down here what happens when I go into that. Yeah, if I enter it, if I exit it, meaning my mouse just happens to transverse over it, or if I click on it, or if I come down here and it gets focus, whatever I'm doing here, when I do it, what do you want it to do? And then I can go tell it what to perform, open another file, go open a folder, go to a hyperlink, go, whatever you want it to do. So you can have these programmable buttons that are available for you when you're working with these forms as well. Now, this is one that I did. I just stuck a hyperlink into it so that you can see that when you click on a programmable button where you've told it to go do something, it goes and does it. And it's just another option that's available to you with these form generators. Okay, moving on. I got about 10 minutes left. Let's see what's next. I'm going to close this. Quantity link. Let's go look at quantity link. I'm going to do an open and I'm going to go into here and I'm going to quantity link and I'm going to look at an architectural example of this first. So here I've got a floor plan and it's got a bunch of count markups on it. And now I'm going to go open an Excel spreadsheet, week 5, quantity link, and it's called quantity link Excel spreadsheet. All of the things that you see here, these various quantities for floor plates, chilled water lines, fire protection lines, LP gas, dampener cabinets, all of that information is coming from this PDF file over here. So if I go into a particular area, I'm going to go into the shower area, and I'm actually going to split my screen in half temporarily so you can see both the drawing and the spreadsheet. If I slide that over, maybe do that right there. When I go in here and I choose that markup and I right click and say that I want to resume counting, and I go in and I place another data point and I place another data point, placing additional versions of this, and I hit escape. As soon as I hit escape, if you were watching the Excel spreadsheet, this just changed. This phase 3 floor plate just changed from 15 to 17, which updated the total, which based on the cost and mathematics, everything updated as a result of simply changing this drawing.
Now, in addition to editing quantities, I can also go back to our tool sets and choose a tool set where the polylinks were used to indicate fire protection and chilled water line values. And I can go in and choose one of those and continue to place those items. And when I double click, if you watch the chilled water value, which is currently set to 90.83 linear feet, you'll see that that's changed to 124. I could do the same thing with natural gas or fire protection, and we see how that's changed to 91.51. But this feature is not just for architectural vertical construction. Let me show you an example of a roadway use of quantity link. Here I'm going to open up a roadway plan and its associated Excel spreadsheet. Currently, This spreadsheet is driven by this PDF, and it's based on these blue polylinks, which represent guardrails, these green polylinks that represent concrete curbing, and a series of objects like these reflective markers and the speed limit signs that are posted along the pavement edge. Just like with the architectural plans, we can go in and choose the speed signs, which currently have a quantity of 2, and we can resume that count and add additional speed limit signs into our drawing. And when we hit the escape key, we can see how the quantity has changed from 2 to 4. We could do the same thing with reflectors. Or we could also come in and use our same tool sets and tell it here that we want roadway quantities, and in particular we want to place more concrete curbing, which is currently set to a value of 1275.57. And if I come in here and place that amount and then place an equal amount there, we can see our value now has gone up to 1425.66. And all the associated mathematical calculations, they're all driven by the Excel formulas. The only thing I'm changing is the PDF file and then letting the Excel spreadsheet take the actions based on what it needs to do. Those are just 2 examples of how Quantity Link can be used into very different industry applications.
The last 2 are redaction and scripting. And I'm going to start with redaction. I'm going to do an open here. And I'm going to go to redaction and just grab a file. There's nothing special about this file. It's just a PDF file like any other. But what redaction does is, if you went in without the Extreme Edition, you could draw a black rectangle. Let's say I want to make this black right here, and I wanted to do that sort of thing, and I wanted it to be filled with black, and then I wanted to grab that, right, and I wanted to flatten it. And then based on that, I want to share this file with other people. And, you've temporarily blacked out some of that stuff, but you have not redacted it, not based on what international and federal standards for redaction of a PDF file are. You've just simply plastered a big black box on there that somebody could undo and get to the information down below it. That's different than redaction. If you have the Extreme Edition, you can go to Edit and go to PDF Content and start with Mark for Redaction. Now this is telling you, if you do this and you save your changes, it can't be undone. So if you want a copy of this file with the stuff that you're blowing out, make sure you save a copy of it before you get going. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw a box around what I want redacted. Now it's just temporary right now. It's showing me the boundaries of it. When I get over text, I can hover, and just like a highlighter, I can choose selective pieces of text, but you can also do it in a drawing. Right now it is limited to rectangular shapes. I can't do a multi-sided redaction like that. But now I've got areas of this document that if I come back and do an edit, PDF content, apply redactions, it's warning me again, these are all your choices. If you make these choices and you hit OK and you move forward, now you're actually doing some redaction, but you still are not 100% completed. It's still not redacted. I could do an undo and get it back. But the minute you do a save, are you sure you want to save that? There's no way to get that information back. So if I don't have a copy of this original PDF with what's there, I can't get to it unless I regenerate it from whatever CAD application produced it to begin with. So redaction is a super secure method of blocking out sensitive information. It's much more secure than just putting a black box in there and flattening a markup. So in the last couple of minutes here, we're going to talk about scripting. What can you do with scripting? In Bluebeam, if I go and work on a file, and I'm just going to create an empty file here, and let's say I wanted to perform a task in here. I wanted to come in and I wanted to create a series of 10 named layers. I wanted to come in here and put a stamp, and I wanted to put that stamp in the lower right-hand corner, and I wanted to do, this and that. There's a whole bunch of things that can be done that can be automated to be done in a specific order, in a specific location, in a specific way, and you can save that as a runnable script that you can use later on. All right, now here's an example of one of those. This one here, I'm going to go into my document and go into script. And just like with all these other things, if I go to batch, I can do a batch script and point it to a bunch of files or a folder full of files and do the same thing. But here, if I want to perform a script, I would go in and I would go to the script editor and I would hit the plus sign right there and I would write my script. All right, now here I would click on it and start typing like the letter A, and it starts showing me all of the capabilities that are there. Do you want to flatten or unflatten? Do you want to stamp? Do you want to delete pages, reverse pages? There's an entire menu of stuff you can do. And when you click on any one of those, this little pop out here tells you the syntax that it has to be in order to function properly. And through this interface, you would be able to go in there and say, I want to do a page extract, comma, blah, 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 comma, double quote, blah, blah, quote. As long as you follow the rules, then you'll be able to create these scripts and reuse these scripts. And that's what I have here. I've got a bunch of scripts that I've done over time. There's one here that says, I want to place a colorized seal at 50% right in the middle of the file and stamp draft print in the lower right-hand corner. If I choose that one and tell it that I want to open it for edit or anything like that, there's the edit right here that shows me exactly what it's doing. But instead, I can just hit run, and it's going to run that script on the open document. So it just placed a seal, it placed a stamp, it did everything it was supposed to do, but it did it in one single file. Now I'm going to grab all of that stuff, and I'm going to flatten it. So everything right now is PDF content, not markups anymore. I could go in and take one of these scripts. One of these scripts is the ability to do away with all the color and just make it grayscale. Well, I don't want to have to keep coming back to this menu. One of the tools you can use is you can grab any of your scripts and you can add them to a toolbar, which is what I've done for my most frequently used scripts, which are right up here. So if I wanted this to turn grayscale, I would just go click on it and say, okay, turn it grayscale. It actually did several steps, but it did it with one click of a button. If I didn't want that, if I wanted to take it colorized like it is and email it to someone, but I wanted it flattened, I would just hit this button. That button is going to flatten it, leave it colorized, and then go launch my email program with it attached as an attachment, but everything is flattened out. So scripting is great, but you can only create the scripts and run the scripts if you've got the Extreme Edition. Now, it also has a secondary script editor, which is external to Bluebeam. If I go to my Start menu and go to Bluebeam and look in here, there's actually a script tool in here, the script editor for 2019. I've got 2019 and 20 on my system right now. I've got both of these, but the editor's pretty much the same. So if I go open the editor, it's an external scripting engine where I can do the exact same thing. Start typing it in. It shows me all the commands that are available. And from here, instead of executing it from within Bluebeam, I can write custom scripts and then perform them on a identified grouping of files that need to have that script run on it, but completely external from going inside of Review and performing the scripting there. Well, we are out of time for today. I've got 2:59. We've got about 1 minute left. I've covered everything on the agenda, so I'm going to look at any questions I have here. Okay, yeah, there's only about actually two questions. So I will respond to these questions individually. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you. If you're one of the people who came back week after week after week, thank you for doing that. I hope you got as much out of it as I did providing it for you. This recording, like all the others, will be edited over the next couple of days and uploaded to our YouTube channel. And again, if you fill out that survey, you don't need to leave your contact information unless you actually do want us to contact you to talk about your training needs and see if we can help you get more out of Bluebeam. Have a great day, everyone.
That's it. I hope you find this video helpful and you'll review the other videos available as well.